Hi, this is Meg Lightheart from megalightheart.com. I wanted to end the week of talking about meetings by introducing a facet of group decision making, particularly when you're wanting to work in terms of participatory decision making or consensus decision making, which is a way that groups fall down a lot. It comes from the Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making, the work of Sam Kano and his team, and it's called the Diamond of Participatory Decision Making. And if you think about the way meetings idealized happen in our mind, is we start with an idea, we come up with divergent perspectives, and then everyone's tracking what everyone's talking about, and then we begin to bring them down to a close, and then you come to a decision. For business as usual, this works. For things that are straightforward, you start with an idea, you go, what are the possibilities? Oh yeah, these are probably the thing. There's an obvious solution, we make a decision. For things that don't have obvious, simple solutions, something different happens. And it's not just a bigger diamond. What tends to happen is we begin to come up with divergent perspectives, and then we need to go even bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you imagine the diamond of business as usual is maybe like that big, and then we're going divergent and divergent, and then there's no obvious solution, so we have to keep going. And in theory, we go, oh, well, we would just go really wide and we'd be listening to each other and being patient. And then gradually, over time, we would come to streamlining those options, and then we come to a decision. The thing I want to talk to you about is that is not what happens. What happens is you begin to go divergent, and then people feel emotions. Some people go, oh, we're just wasting time. Well, that's a stupid idea, or I just don't know what I don't know what we're talking about. Some people step back and begin to comment on process, going, weren't we going to stick to a topic? I don't understand how this relates to that. And there's a whole bunch of confusion and annoyance. And often what happens, unfortunately, is the person in charge listens to everything that's going on and goes, I think we've discussed this enough. I think the best thing is this. Or they suggest something going, do you think, yeah, I think that's probably the way. Let's go with that. And the experience for people who are involved in the discussion is like, oh, I thought they wanted me to be part of this discussion. Evidently, they made the decision beforehand, and then it shuts things down. So it is true that in good participatory decision making, particularly around things that have no obvious solution, particularly when there's very divergent perspectives on something, is that yes, there's a growing divergent set of thinking. Yes, at the end we come down to narrowing the number of options and then coming to a decision. What happens in the middle is people get confused, they get annoyed, they get impatient, they get lost, they get disgusted. And the bit in the middle is the groan zone. It's what Sam Kano and their team named the groan zone. And the groan zone is really hard. And it's important that we persist in the groan zone if we're going to come up with a decision that it involves everyone and is a decision or set of decisions that are really going to produce sustainable results. If this is something that a group or a community really want to talk about, then we have to go through the groan zone. And there are tools for the divergent thinking, there's tools for getting through the groan zone, and there's tools for the other end, and there's tools for the decision. And that takes quite a lot of knowledge and skill, and even just knowing that the groan zone exists, even just explaining that to people before you start a discussion, it allows people to go, oh, we're in the groan zone, aren't we? And I've seen it happen in groups that I've been with. We've talked about the groan zone, and then they've self-recognized to go, oh, we're in the groan zone, and that means that we need to step back, begin to listen to each other, make visible all the things that are happening, all the different perspectives, make sure we're trying to really actively listen to each other, and there's a whole bunch of tools to make sure that that happens. But even absent those tools, just knowing that the Groan Zone exists is going to mean that your group is going to last longer, rather than just shutting down. And as the person in charge of the discussion, it's important that you flag this up at the beginning, and then potentially flag that it's happening, and then also know some skills for how to deal with that. Mainly keeping a perspective on allowing there to be lots of perspectives going on, making sure that there's enough time to go through this process. And the Groan Zone can go on for days, weeks, months, years, for negotiations that are very, very entrenched. Most of the time it's not that serious, but even during a meeting, if you're talking about something significant, you need to allow enough time for the Groan Zone to happen, and then to come out the other side. Coming up with sustainable shared decisions with shared understanding is really hard work, and often unpleasant. So the expectation that we're all going to be nice all the way along, people do miscommunicate, people do misunderstand, people do go off on tangents, people do feel feelings, and even knowing that exists means that it doesn't mean your group is functioning badly. It's not a dysfunction, it's a function of a functional group talking about something that doesn't have an obvious solution. So see if you can introduce people to the idea of a Groan Zone at the beginning of your meeting if you're talking about something significant, and you'll find that it makes a big difference in terms of the way that you can solve things. If you need some support in putting things into practice in terms of planning meetings or creating a culture that is more participatory, then go and check out my coaching packages on megalightheart.com. I'd love to talk to you one-to-one about that. If you have steady income and you're not really looking for a coach, but you're appreciating the benefit of the content I'm producing, then go to patreon.com/megalightheart and become a monthly patron. Wherever you're watching this, click like, comment, leave a question, share it with people who you think are going to get on with it. If you're on YouTube, click subscribe, and I'll see you next week with a whole other topic. Hope this week's been useful for you and introduced some ideas around meetings which you're going to be able to implement. I'm Meg Lightheart from megalightheart.com, and I'll see you next week.